and let these guys help aid in on the conversation. If you're new, talking CI, carbon intensity, and that's basically the carbon footprint per bushel of our crop production. And that's important because our carbon footprint per bushel ties into the supply chain, in particular the biofuel supply chain, which has an opportunity to go after the 45Z tax credit to incentivize decarbonizing, lowering the CI of the fuel itself. So a couple updates on 45Z as we get started. There is continuing to be really, really good updates and progress being made out of Washington, D.C. It's been tremendous. Continuing to be really exciting. I'm still very hopeful that things are going to happen. Since we last had a chit chat, the Department of Energy had their public comment period come to a close. They were asking about feed studies and the provisional emissions rating process, which is not necessarily going to be the norm. What we are advocating for is make sure that there's an actual feedstock calculator for 45Z and avoid having to utilize the provisional emission rating process for most cases. However, still there for kind of fringe cases and times where an ethanol plant or biofuel producer, at times they may be doing something unique. They may be doing something special that's outside of the normal CI scoring process. And that's where they would utilize the PER process and this feed study. So it's more of a fringe thing versus the norm. But anyway, thanks to everybody who did put in their public comments. We aligned with multiple other advocacy groups and other partners in the biofuel space and tried to make sure that our comments were in alignment with a lot of those other partners. So that public comment period closed with the Department of Energy, and we were absolutely advocating for the rules to get finalized to have a feedstock calculator included. I know that process is moving forward. The IRS is making progress on getting the actual rules out. The USDA is making progress on publishing their feedstock carbon intensity calculator and publishing their updated guidance. So things are moving in a really, really good direction. And a lot of chatter about getting some updates yet this calendar year. So things are happening, going in a good direction, and hearing from multiple different sources, similar time frames and progress being made. So, and that info coming from my direct conversations with folks in the administration, and then with other folks who are spending a lot of time in DC and communicating with the right people as well. So good to hear a consistent message. 45Z is making progress and moving in the right direction. So farmers, it's, obviously we're in the fields and stuff here now, harvesting crazy. So stay focused. And then when you got a rainy day or after harvest gets done or field work is starting to slow up, it's going to be a major time to get all that data organized and get things put together in topsoil so that you're ready for the audits that can be required, if as we get clarity on 45Z. But we know it's the administration's intent to have the rules out here relatively quickly. We know it's their intent to include the feedstock and include the farmers. It's just kind of don't know exactly when things are going to happen. So in the short term, we're continuing to help farmers connect with other opportunities. And that's really what we wanted to talk about here today is additional value that Continuum is helping to bring to farmers, stackable with 45Z. There's a variety of interesting things that are happening there. So we've got two guests on with me today. Dale, we call him Sale Dale. He's on our sales team. I've been with Continuum for, almost a year and a half, but full-time for a number of months here now since he graduated from Iowa State. And he's talking to hundreds of farmers about programs we have going on with Continuum. It's great insight there. And then my dad, Brian Hora, that wanted to give a kind of an update on the farm and his experience so far pursuing R&D credits and cost share opportunities. And wanted to start with him because everything that we've built with Continuum, really built it trying to solve problems for our own farm, for our own family farm. And if it can solve a problem for us, hopefully it can solve a problem for you as well. That's been the theme for the 10 years that we've been doing this, is trying to, make things better on family, make things better for yours as well. So with that, Dad, maybe I toss it over to you. Why don't you give everyone kind of a little rundown of the farm and kind of farm update before we dig into the rest of the topics.
Okay, so yeah, we started harvesting beans Sunday. Got quite a bit of the corn done already. Probably 3/4 of the corn is already out, and good yields. Some places it's surprisingly good. Nothing over the top, crazy high end, but nice to see that the typical lower producing areas are actually producing pretty good crop this year. And so corn yields have been good. Beans, to say we started on them Sunday, and they are bone dry. Second year in a row where these beans are just extremely dry, tough to get through, green stems, but on those green stems are beans that are just bone dry and down in the below 9% moisture range. So that hurts yield, obviously. Probably giving up 5 bushel right off the top just because of lack of moisture in the beans. But we learned our lesson last year to not wait. Last year, mid-season, about like situation about like we are, where we've been extremely dry. We had a good inch of rain one night. 3 days later, one particular field, the pods all started popping open. And within about a day's time, we probably lost 15 to 20% of the beans on the ground. So we're not going to wait for a rain. It's too risky to do that, I think. So anyhow, we're progressing on beans and making solid progress with it. But and getting some cover crop planted, getting organized with the way the markets are, and there's Mitchell, you mentioned there's good potential yet here for 45Z. That's way better news than what we have on soybean exports. I know that. And with that in mind, there's nothing real positive on soybean exports right now, and it's kind of concerning. So we're looking at doing more corn on corn next year. Tremendous yields this year with it. And I think we've got a few things maybe figured out with it. So getting prepared to do more of that.
Maybe speak to that just a little bit more as well. Playing with some more residue digesters and the cover crops and all that to make that work, and kind of some flexibility in our system, really, and being able to switch to do more corn on corn. And you're not talking a lot of corn on corn, but a field in particular that did extremely well corn on corn this year, and it's like the beans aren't going to be probably worth much, so let's do corn again.
Yeah, particularly in some areas that some of the rougher ground has a little tougher time producing good bean yields. But the corn yields were really, really good this year. So with that potential for a real low yield potential on soybeans, or lower yield potential, the economics just look a little bit better for corn. But yeah, we've used some residue digesters. I think that's helping break some of this material down, because the corn on corn we're doing it's no-till, cover cropped, and no-tilled corn right into corn stalks. So it's working well. And I think, just kind of looking at some things, this long-term cover crop program we've been on, in most fields are now 10 to 12 years of continuous cover crop. And compared to some ground that we just started farming this past year, we're probably picking up 20, 25 bushel on yield compared to fields that have not been long-term cover crop. And this is like absolutely side by side, very, very similar growing conditions, same hybrids and all that, other than one has had cover crop long-term and the other has not. And so some real positives with the longer-term cover crop fields.
Yeah, it seems like it's really paying off. Speak really briefly to the some of your hot take on our nitrogen rates, and we've got some extremely interesting data and results coming in. We'll have to clean up and talk about it more, but really interesting to see some of the impact of nitrogen rates and side dress on our operation.
Yeah, so nitrogen, I mean, when I look at the number of times I apply nitrogen, it's maybe up to 5 or 6 on some fields. Now, some of that, it's real small amounts. A little nitrogen credit in the dry fertilizer. You got a little bit of nitrogen in the starter fertilizer. You got a little bit that's going on foliar, a little bit with the herbicide. Primarily, though, we put on fall anhydrous. And some of the easier fields that I've been trying to cut back on the amount of fall applied anhydrous, and so that I can split apply and use a side dress nitrogen along with that. So I'm not certain what I'm going to do rate wise this fall yet. I might cut back a little bit more even, but some of this stuff I put on 120 pounds of anhydrous, 120 units of nitrogen in the fall, and with the intention of coming back and side dressing in another 40 units in the spring. And so I get a total of 160 pounds of just basically for the nitrogen application. And then, there might be another 10 to 15 pounds in the other applications that we make. So I left a strip, though, this year of the 120 pounds of anhydrous without putting any side dress on with it, and just to see what it would do. And I watched it all year. I knew exactly where the strip was across the field. If you get up above and get a drone over the top of it all year long, you could not see it. But the only way to really know absolutely I was in the right spot this fall going through it is I could see where the coulters had gone through and side dressed the other nitrogen, the UAN. And in this one strip, there was definitely no coulter track. So I'm in the right strip. But come down to it, that strip really had about 135 total pounds maximum nitrogen applied to it, made 241 bushel. The strip with another 40 units of N right next to it gained me 2 bushel of the acre. I got 143 or 243 out of it. So a 2 bushel gain does not cover that nearly $40 cost. That's for certain. And then we did try in another field with heavier rates of fall applied anhydrous, 160 pounds of fall applied, which would be on the high end of what we think we need. Came back in again with that 40 units of nitrogen, and we saw 0 yield difference. So you would have thought this year with the amount of rain we had, good rains in April, May, June, and then heavy rains in July, that additional nitrogen would have gained us some yield. But in our couple of trials we had, it didn't gain us anything. So definitely didn't cover the cost. So anyhow,
pretty wild, and it's just a balance every year, right? Of man, we're pulling our fertilizer back so much, and just always worried that we're maybe pulling it too far. And then we do experiments like this. It's like, no, the additional expense and additional fertilizer not doing us anything. The biology is doing what we've built it up to do, and the system's really humming along. But all right, we'll come back around to that. Dale, let's get you brought in. Speak to kind of farmer sentiment or any other hot takes that you've got. You're talking to a tremendous amount of farmers, so anything to add in for what you're hearing on the farm?
Yeah, I mean, the economic climate isn't looking the best. I think it's a lot of guys are thinking real hard and long about what this is going to look like for next year, and whether that be crop plan or trying new things. With the R&D tax credits, I feel like people are a little bit more open to experimenting, on a good year. And hopefully with these R&D tax credits, we can keep that sentiment high for trying new things and being innovative on the farm. When you're going to get some of that money back in tax credits, especially with the 3-year look back period that we're able to do for 2025, you can get 4 years worth of tax credits and bank them for up to 20 years. Even if you don't have a huge tax burden for 2025, we can wait for some higher prices to take advantage of it. But really, I mean, that's the thing, is thinking long and hard about what this is going to look like for the 2026 crop, and trying to, get as much revenue generated as we can with some of these alternative programs on top of commodity prices. So yeah, that's the consensus.
That R&D piece, we're connecting all of our Topsoil Connect and CI certification farmers with R&D credits. If you are working with us, make sure that you're talking with Dale or our folks and educate on that. But the R&D credits, basically to provide a tax offset for your experimenting that you're doing on the farm. And I mean, that as you were just talking, we're obviously doing a ton of experimentation. You're early in the process of exploring these R&D credits, but maybe talk through what has that experience been so far, the process of looking at these R&D credits, and what's your experience so far, I guess. Obviously, we're early into it, but so far.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple quick things with that. I mean, I know we're working with some partners through Continuum Ag in this process, but I have talked to some buddies from back in college that are doing these same programs with some other people that are basically involved through the same system, but not the exact same people here. And they are amazed at the amount of revenue, the potential that's available to them, and doing the exact same R&D credits and going through the process, collecting their information and documenting everything, and then getting the credits back to their accountants. So, but yeah, there's in this process so far, we've had an initial consultation, just a phone conversation. Took probably 15, 20 minutes, something like that, to kind of talk through some things and get a general idea of what these credits are and what they do, how it works. So in that process, we just talked about a few different things that I'm doing here on the farm and what might work. And overall, basically, my understanding is, you've got to be changing something or experimenting on something. So, and when it comes to experimenting on something, this is goes way back to, a long time ago when you learn about experimentation. You got to have an idea. What are you trying to do? And then just the concept of it. Put together a plan and then apply that plan. And then afterwards, you analyze it. And really, that's all this is about. And having the idea, the plan, application of it, and then what's the conclusion of it. And in that process, then documenting everything the best you can. And you probably have something that you can apply for then. So that's kind of where we're at. And as I said, we've had this initial consultation. I have another meeting coming up to kind of get a little bit better idea of where we're going to go with it. Sometime the next week or so, we're going to get together and talk again and set up a schedule. I wasn't in a big rush on this because of the way my tax year ended. We're working through a farm business, and current tax returns I have to get filed within the next couple of months. So we want to get this thing done within a few months. Kind of all depends on which tax year you're trying to work this into. So that kind of dictates the schedule and the urgency of everything. So we're not real urgent with it yet. I've got a couple of months to kind of get it all put together. So we've taken our time going through the consultation process, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's at least what we're trying to get a lot of farmers to do, right? Is have that first 15-minute, 20-minute phone call. Sounds like it's pretty painless, pretty high level, but get you starting to think about what are the practices that could qualify? What are some of the research and developments that could qualify? Because remember, folks, it's just an accounting concept. You're just changing, are you accounting for an expense as a normal business expense, or are you accounting for it as a research and development expense? And if you are accounting for it as an R&D expense, you can take that expense in that given calendar year and deduct that expense to offset your taxable income. And then you get an additional credit. And Dad explained you were able to get a federal credit. And then in Iowa and multiple other states, Dale, you may have a better grasp of this. In a lot of states, there's an individual state tax credit as well, plus the federal. Federal is usually about 7% is what it averages out to be. But then there's the state component as well.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And some of these, from what I'm hearing from Dale and David, that there's some of these accountants out there don't realize that there's federal credits available. They know there's some state credits, but they didn't know there was federal credits available as well. So, but the federal credit is there's a narrow range on it. It's 8 to 10% or something like that. But then the states, it varies state by state, and whether or not there is. But where we're at here in Iowa, it's an additional 6%. So, we're talking roughly 15% tax credit potential on this. So,
Yeah,
So
going
if
going
you
to the
end up
state
with,
level.
call it, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, on the state level, pretty much all of the Corn Belt states have state level tax credits. Some of the state level stuff is industry kind of specific. Thankfully, in Iowa, agriculture is one of them that is included in the specific set of industries that are able to qualify for R&D. So
That's great. So it's just about accounting, trying to figure out how much of your expenses qualify. And I know, Dad, you were talking, even we've got some pretty unique development that we did on our turbo till when we rigged it up with the Montag system. So, built out kind of some custom equipment, and part of those expenses too are gonna qualify even. And so yeah, and from when you're talking, getting 7 to 15% of your qualifying expenses back as a tax credit. And for this year only, you can look back to 2022. That was a key part of the Big Beautiful Bill. And why some of the CPAs may not be talking about it yet is the federal piece just got fixed up with the Big Beautiful Bill. So that's why a lot of farmers or some of those CPA firms aren't as familiar with the federal program. It's just because in July it got kind of fixed. And now a huge opportunity that, in my mind, I think it's a no-brainer to at least have the 15-minute phone call and figure out if it's going to work for your operation.
yeah, that's right. It's pretty painless to go through that first part and have a couple ideas in mind, what you might think you want to be doing, something that you're doing that's not normal. It hasn't been normal to your operation for certain. Because there are some things that are normal practices. I mean, even experimenting with seed corn. I mean, a lot of farmers do seed test plots. And this one's a simple, easy example of this. But if you're running a seed plot and you have half a dozen hybrids that you have never seen before in your corn trials, and based off of that data from that information, the following year, you go and you buy 100 bags of a given hybrid. Well, you did an experiment. You learned that hybrid's a good experiment. The following year, that 100 bags, you might be able to earn the tax credit on that because you did the research on your own farm and you haven't had this particular hybrid in the past. We're looking at doing some of those things on some micronutrient treatments and things like that as well, and some other biologicals. The nice thing about doing the other biologicals and stuff, I don't have as much expense on those on a per acre basis as you would on seed corn. But what I might have is additional application expenses. I might be making an extra trip with the sprayer across the field. So that extra time and cost for my labor and that sprayer going across the field, that probably is what some extra value that I can apply for out of that particular process. And that's one example of it. Mitchell, you'd mentioned what we're doing with the turbo till, and just kind of hit on that. It's a vertical tillage tool. We have an air seeder system on it, and which, isn't all that unique, except for what I ended up doing is I have it set up so I can band my cover crops and band my dry fertilizer in strips. And, it's set up on 15-inch spacings. It is not standard equipment. It's something unique that I end up spending a fair amount of money on trying to get it organized, and had a local fabricator design some stuff. So the cost of the additional equipment, the local fabrication, and then the concept of what we were trying to do and why is something I can simply document. I don't know how into this report yet what I end up having to do, but if I have that simple plan, the implementation of it, what I did, and then these costs explained in there, and just have a little story with it, I don't know if it's going to take 2 or 3 paragraphs or a 1-page deal to have verification in case I ever get asked about it. But that's not hard to do. It's a simple concept. Write this stuff down, document it, and then if there's any way of tracking the expenses or the gain in the end, which is what we're after in the long run anyhow, is we're either simplifying things, making things quicker and easier, or we're trying to gain more income. Document what that final outcome is. And that's what I intend to do. I haven't done that on everything yet, but because as I sit here and think about stuff over time when I'm sitting in the combine seat, there's a couple of other things that I think back for a year or two that I've done that are a little bit unique and that we have gone ahead and implemented. So there's several different things that I'm sure we'll end up trying to work into this program, but probably at least 2 or 3 different angles of it.
And with that, it's if you got a project like that put together $25,000 worth of stuff, 15% of 20 grand. I mean, you're talking $3,000 that we didn't even know was there before. Yeah, sure, it's going to take you an hour or two to put together some paperwork, whatever, and go back and get your receipts and documentation. But an hour or two of a little bit of paperwork to get $3,000, like, it seems like pretty good hourly rate. So I don't know.
It is, and
to your point, at least having the call with them to figure out what are the type of things that are going to qualify, at least to be thinking about it.
Yeah, and this basically what we're doing is you're just going back and getting the data, the information that we've used, and compiling that data, that information, and kind of doing a summarized report of it, which most of us never really do. Most of the documentation is already there. I mean, I can look at a yield map to see if it gained me anything. I can look at those expenses and see what the total expense was, total cost, and the amount of time I put into it. It's really just kind of finalizing and analyzing an experiment that I did. So there's really nothing wrong with that, and actually, it probably sets you up for even better things in the future. So,
yeah, wild deal. Dale, you're talking with a bunch of guys on it. Any other, any feedback that some of them have given? I know even guys that are doing stuff on livestock and all that too. I mean, obviously, we're talking about it just from a crop perspective, but especially if you're in, it's not specific to row crop farming or whatever. It's just an accounting concept. Any businesses can qualify. Continuum has been doing these credits for years. I just didn't realize that they were applicable to farmers until a couple of months ago, and now we're having huge success helping farmers get in, whether it be row crop or otherwise.
Yeah, so the general idea as far as the R&D tax credits is it has to be trying to solve some sort of issue, has to be scientific in nature, and the costs associated with it can't be depreciable assets. Beyond that, the door is pretty much wide open to do whatever you want. It doesn't have to work at the end of the day. There just has to be the intention there to try to solve some sort of issue. So tying in the livestock piece, anything that you're doing to boost animal health, experimental wise, whether that be medication stuff, feed studies. We could do some stuff with like rotational grazing. Genetics. If you're going that, genetics is a huge piece of it. Same goes for small grains, cover crops, all that different stuff. And depending on how aggressive you get with it, you can include majority of the costs associated with, say, planting a new cover crop stuff, as far as on the corn or the soybean input side of things, diesel fuel, seed costs, fertility stuff, costs of application, as Brian mentioned, costs of application. So that can really, add up as far as qualified research expense. Those are the expenses that we can qualify for on the R&D side of things. So it leaves it really wide open for doing whatever the farm wants to do. I mean, as Rich mentioned, if you're doing anything, if you own a business on top of farming, anything that you're doing that's new and exciting on the business side of things is something that we can address as well.
Yeah, I think in my mind, all of this boils back to we're trying to continue to drive our mission, right? At Continuum, to help 1 million farmers improve their profitability via improving their soil health. We think 45Z is going to be a massive piece of that, but it's not the only thing. R&D credits, cost share opportunities, deducting residual fertility, lots of different ways that you can drive increased revenue. And we're just trying to help you collect all the data one time and utilize it multiple times over and help drive those connections. So we're got some cool things going. And again, farmers, be thinking about this stuff. talk to Dale or Dave or hit us up if you want to get the ball rolling. And especially though, something to be thinking about as we're harvesting here, and be thinking about for next year, more opportunities for experimentation, obviously, and there's ways to offset the cost of doing that. So anyway, we're at time. Appreciate you guys taking the time here. We'll let you keep things rolling. I'm gonna keep chugging along out west to Omaha. I'm going to the Renewable Fuels Association meeting. They got a workshop on 45Z, and just continuing to advocate for farmers, working with the biofuel producers out there. So making it happen. But thanks everyone for hopping on. We'll be back next week. Another chit chat. Be safe out on the farm. We'll talk to y'all next time. See you guys.
Yep.